Hi, the book I want to talk about now is called Time Traveling with a Hamster by Ross Wilford. Interesting title, huh? Anyway, this story starts, well, this part of the story starts at least when Al is celebrating his 12th birthday. He lives at home with his mom. His dad isn't there because his dad died of a brain clot, blood clot in his brain when he was only age 8. He really misses his dad, but it's his 12th birthday. And one of the presents he gets on his 12th birthday is an envelope from his mom. And the envelope says, to Al, open 16 hours after receiving, no later and no earlier. And his mom says, this letter is from your dad. Now, Al is really anxious to open up this letter, but it specifically says 16 hours after, no sooner, no later than that. And so he decides to wait. And when he opens it up, this letter, there's some instructions. It tells him to go to a cellar of the house that they all lived in when they were a family of 3. And that's in the same town. And he has to go there, and he must go there and follow some other instructions that are in this particular letter, which is going into the cellar of the house within 7 days from opening the envelope. No sooner than 7 days, or no later than 7 days, and he shouldn't tell his mom. So Al decides that he is going to do what his father said, and he knows where the house is, and he goes, and there's a cellar, and it's an underground cellar, and he remembers a way to get into the cellar. And I'm not sure where the owners are, but for some reason, they don't seem to be around, the current owners. And so Al goes down into the cellar, and he finds a door that is somewhat hidden because he remembers his dad had a laboratory there underneath. And so he goes in there and he finds a second letter addressed to Al. And it was written by his dad just a few weeks before he died in the hospital from a blood clot in his brain. And there's also in the office a funny looking machine. It's actually a time machine. And the letter explains to Al that his father has traveled back in time. And this letter was written before he died. And he traveled back in time to try to find out what caused the brain clot that caused him to die when Al was 8 years old. And he discovered he'd been in an accident when he himself was 12, and there had been a little sliver of something left in his brain, and that finally caused a clot that killed him years later when he was an adult. And so he has been experimenting with, his father had been experimenting with time travel, and he tells Al, if you can go back in time and prevent me from having that accident that I had when I was 12 years old, then maybe I will be alive to see you through your adulthood. I won't die when you are 8 years old. Can you do this? And he gives him very explicit instructions on what he has to do and the time frame he has to follow. Wow, this is kind of an interesting thing. Can you go back in time? Al's got all sorts of things to consider. What if he goes back in time and saves his father's life, but his father, for some reason, goes someplace else and never meets his mother? Then Al wouldn't be born. And so how would that affect things? I mean, he wouldn't be alive. What if he manages to save his father, but he can't come back in time himself to his present age? So that's almost the same as not ever being born, except that he'll be stuck in time about 20 years ago. And that would be horrible because he doesn't know anything about life 20 years ago. There's a whole bunch of things that can go wrong, but things could go right too. And there's also a hamster that's going to travel with him. Read Time Traveling with a Hamster. Fun book about a whole bunch of improbables. And can time travel happen?